You are listening to Salty Believer Unscripted, a conversation on Christian ministry and the Christian life.
This is Salty Believer Unscripted. I'm Josiah Walker.
I'm Bryan Catherman.
And today we're concluding our journey through the Simeon Trust workshop.
We did it.
We made it back. Here we are.
Survived.
Woof, that was a long road trip. It was a long week. It was a good week, though.
It was a good one.
Thoughts?
All right. I don't even know where to begin.
My brain hurts.
Part of me wants to go back and hear what Brett said and just kind of see, I see what he's talking about now. Overall thought, I would say absolutely fantastic to engage in that. I want to do one at least every year. Yeah. I think for as long as I'm preaching and studying the Bible and teaching the Bible, just simply to stay sharp. They talk about like spring training. I think Robert Kinney talked about that. And I had guys in my group that preach stuff with Desiring God and have PhDs and have been preaching for 25 years, 30 years, 40 years. Two guys were church planters. One guy was just learning to preach. I think everybody was benefited and blessed and helped from the conversations. And I think the diversity in the small groups helped. I think the training material was incredibly helpful. It wasn't that there was a bunch of stuff I'd never learned before. It was just really good to be in the room and see it, and to see it pan out. And there's one other thing that was really good to see. It was outstanding. The challenge to take a text out of context and preach a prosperity gospel sermon. I was amazed. You won.
That
was outstanding.
Easiest $5 I ever won in my life. But I don't know if that was supposed to be my biggest takeaway from the thing, but
it was fun to watch.
That week was incredible. There was so much to take in. I felt like I was just drinking from the fire hose. But you're absolutely right. Like, they talked about it being spring training, and that's what it felt like. It felt like it was getting back to the fundamentals, getting back to the basics of preaching, and just getting some solid structure.
You know what's weird, though? It didn't feel like the basics of preaching. You go to a seminary course, and you got a Haddon Robinson book. Nothing against Haddon Robinson. And you learn 3 points, put an illustration. It wasn't that. It was here's structure and foundation of the scripture, and how does the structure inform this, and how does the historical context, and how does the literary devices that are here, and what tools can we employ here to get to the heart of this, and what's the message of the author, and what's the history of the audience, and how do we do this, and how do we see the on-ramp to the gospel here, and what do we do here, and what's the message you're going to preach? It wasn't just like, here's 3 ways to do a sermon. It was like, here's how you should read and understand the Bible, and then communicate it. So we didn't even hardly get into like the mechanics of adornment and inflection of your voice. We didn't talk about any of that stuff.
Sure.
It was really 2 Timothy on steroids. Look at the structure. Look at the meaning. How does this play into here? I feel like I know 2 Timothy so much better because we went through the whole book in workshops, in groups. It was great. It was awesome.
Yeah, everyone there, I think, was a pastor, either a lead pastor or like an associate pastor.
No, you had those guys that were like, hey, they said when they would do the introductions, I'm just a church member. And like,
there were some church members.
Just a church member? I don't think so. And then the next guy introduces himself, I'm just a pastor.
That's right.
No, we had some guys that came who were just members, and there was a couple of interns who had only preached a couple times.
Which, coming out of the event, I can see why. Because this would be super helpful whether you were like a small group leader or a Bible study teacher or...
Oh, yeah. And so I think when we went into it, I said, hey, what I'm looking forward to is the connection with the people. And I think that was really helpful. Because the instruction... So here's the thing. Even the instruction... So when you watch the online courses, which I stand by and think they're fantastic, they say, all right, talk to the guy next to you and look at how the top and tail shows us the melodic line of whatever, or look here and see if you can see where the, whatever. And then the video, you read it, but then it just jumps ahead. Those pieces were amazing.
Right.
When you're seeing some of that for yourself, see if you can pick up 3 major outlines, or what. Let's try this tool and see if this tool helps us get to some meaning. Well, that was okay. Let's try another tool and see if that helps us get to meaning. And all of a sudden you're just doing so much more hands-on. Yeah. It was outstanding. It was outstanding.
The online workshops are amazing, and I've done the first principles, and we even did some in the car.
We listened to the Revelation, the apocalyptic literature, which was really good. That's Don Carson and Michael Lawrence, and anyway.
But as good as those are, there was something to be said for being in that workshop with other guys, being able to talk about the text with other guys, get feedback and input from others.
Yeah.
And really discuss it.
And the system created a way that everybody got to be heard.
Yeah.
Everybody got to present. It was.
And I can see looking now where if like they said you didn't have to watch the First Principles online class before you went, but I can see how that would help. Really understanding the verbiage and the process and all that.
It would just give you the you wouldn't be learning the method for the first time. You'd actually be then putting it more to practice.
Right.
So that would definitely be helpful.
Speaking of putting things to practice, the first day, right? You and I had worked on worksheets prior to the event. We got assigned text that we were going to put an outline to.
I should have done more work on it too, but I didn't really know what to expect.
I was writing a sermon the week before we left. I just didn't have the time, so I kind of spent, not as much time as I should have putting that worksheet together. And then what happened?
So
do you want to share?
So I think we should share this part. So Robert, when he was here and he was talking with what to expect, he actually invited us after we recorded with him. We're really hoping, we'll see what happens, but we're really hoping to maybe put a workshop in Salt Lake City.
That'd be amazing.
It'd be great. And so he invited us to come down and sit as an observer in the leadership training day. So the day before the workshop.
Yeah.
And so they went through every text.
Yeah.
And I think Brett had talked about that too. But they went through all the texts. They actually put into practice what they'd be doing in the workshops, but all with the leaders.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we're going, wait a minute.
Right.
This is way different than I thought it would be. So immediately I'm feeling the burden of, I don't want to present this with my weak sauce presentation. Are you kidding me? And then we learned some things too.
Yeah.
And so we go back to our Airbnb and we're trying to handwrite new forms. And luckily they made copies for us.
Right.
Because we didn't have our computers with us, We didn't have, and so we're trying to edit and trying to change. But I think it's because we wanted to learn.
Absolutely.
I could have just brought my thing in and said, well, oops. But instead I was like, no way. I want you guys I want this feedback because it's so helpful.
And even if we hadn't gone to that kind of preview day to see how the structure works with their leaders and stuff, the first day alone, because we presented on the second day of the workshop.
Exactly, yeah.
That first day I learned so much that caused me to want to go back to my hotel room and rewrite things.
And I didn't want them to tell me the things I had already learned. Right. I wanted to improve my worksheet and then have them give me feedback again. And you know what I'd really like to do? Honestly, it'd be amazing to go back and do the same ones again.
Right.
Okay, I've moved the ball this far forward. Now I've moved the ball this far forward. Because that's what this is just continually working through it. I don't think you could ever get to now you've arrived.
Right.
It's amazing.
And that's the common theme throughout all that workshop that they kept saying over and over that I really loved was it wasn't about perfection. It was about progress.
Yes.
Right? And just always moving the ball forward. So I remember I pulled out, in that first group, my handwritten notes, the photocopies that had been made. And they're like, what'd you do? Did you go home last night and work on this? I'm like, hey, I'm in a hotel room. Just like you said, I want to keep moving the ball forward. So show me more. And they were really helpful and beneficial in that.
It was just an encouragement to preaching. I love that you and I, using kind of the same method and pathway they showed us, it's nothing that would counteract anything you learned in seminary. It's just literally, it's just confining yourself to the steps before you move to the next step.
Right.
That's all it really is. Let's start here, then this will lend itself to here, this will lend itself to here. And I think the order is so helpful. So we did that in the car.
Yeah.
I'm preaching out of Acts. I just did it. I preached this Sunday, but we were driving back. And I said, let's just walk through the steps in the text that I'm preaching. And in 20, 30 minutes, it just opened up so much of the scripture because you're sort of limiting your view. So instead of being distracted by everything, dial in on this and see if the tool unlocks something. Nope, not really. Let's see if this tool helps us get to something. Yeah, kind of. Oh, here's a tool that really helps. The next thing you know, you're like, oh, nope, I see where we're going. And then the whole thing just flowed out. And the sermon, so... what was Sunday's date? What was yes?
This Sunday was the 30th.
Okay, so if you want to see the outflowing of that, you can just go to Redeeming Life Church, January 28th or 29th, whatever it is, the last Sunday of January. I'm so lost in the date right now.
It's blurring together. It was the 28th.
The 28th. It's in the When the Gospel Goes series, and we preached Acts 14, the last part of that, and you can see what happened. But we're just outflowing. You can see the sermon. It's not perfect.
Right. And you didn't write the sermon in 30 minutes, but you got the structure. You got the skeleton. You got the format.
Yeah, we didn't even write the sermons really.
Because we were in the car.
In the groups. We were walking through what does the text really say, and what do we see here, and what does this mean, and what are tools we can use to get to the meaning of this, and then how are we going to convey this meaning in the gospel piece. So the Question 7 of the worksheet was just kind of an outline piece, you
Yeah.
would still you'd still have a bunch of work to do to edit and cut things out and add things. And hey, what'd you think of the preaching? We saw 3 sermons while we were there.
Yeah.
We saw what's his name, PJ.
PJ Tobias. He was the pastor of the host church.
We sat under his preaching.
And Romel Williams, one of the instructors.
Yep.
And Robert Kinney.
Robert Kinney. What'd you think of him?
They were phenomenal. Yeah. No, great sermons. 30 minutes. Very punchy, and it just flowed nice. I think that was one of the biggest takeaways for me was just seeing how that structure and everything works, because I feel like I rushed too much to kind of the finish line of like wanting to have my sermon done. But when they outlined kind of the structure and the process for putting your outline and your skeleton together, that was really helpful.
Yeah.
To really see, especially when we did it in the car and see it only takes so much time.
Yeah, well, we didn't even have commentaries and things in the car. Everything we needed really was in the text. Now, I went home and I did check some commentaries to make sure we weren't crazy. But we saw a lot of that stuff in the text before we ever went to that. So it really just helps you see from God's Word how you're going to communicate God's
And the
Word.
sermons that were preached were from the same text that we had been working on that week.
Yes.
So that was helpful to see that lived out, the outlines.
It was really cool, Romel's preaching, because we had just done that text in our groups.
Yeah.
And so we had all just hammered through it. So it wasn't like he had some big surprise for us or some, hey, it's really good. He really had to handle that text rightly, which that's the goal. And you went, oh, okay. And then you kind of see, there's a lot of different ways this could have gone. He went with this. He went over here. Yeah. But we had been all working in it. So it was just great.
And what I saw, what I thought was fascinating was looking at their website. They also do this workshop for women, too.
Yes.
Just like they do the online courses for women, they have workshops for women.
Yep.
I thought that was huge, because I know my wife would be really interested in
going.
I'm sure women in our church would be.
We probably need more.
Yeah.
We probably need more, because there's not very many of them.
Right.
And that probably be really beneficial.
No, I saw the ones coming up here in the next few were like sold out.
Yeah, and there's not very many.
You had to go like a year out just to find one that was.
So what do you think it would take? I mean, we're in a mission field context for sure. We don't have, I don't know, I think we have some guys here in our area that I think have gone to some workshops.
Yeah.
Because the small group leaders need to go to workshops, they need to get a handle on this, and they need to be, what do you think it would take to do something like this in Salt Lake? Because we're talking about that. Sure. We'd love to see it happen.
I'd love to do it. And I don't know what the interest is out there. Hopefully there's some guys either who live in Utah or live in the Mountain West here who'd want to come and be a part of that. It was helpful. I feel like it's the kind of thing I'd want to go to a couple workshops every year.
Oh, yeah.
So if we did one here, at least one, and then travel to one, I think that'd be huge.
Hey, what do you think would stop somebody from thinking they should go?
I think...
Like, what kinds of things, right? Like, maybe theology. Because we had a couple people in our workshop, you could tell there were some theological differences, and they were sort of struggling.
Yeah.
If you don't value expositional preaching, in fact, if you don't think expositional preaching is a good way to preach,
or you've never preached that way,
you've never done it, it'd be a little tough.
Yeah.
Or if you come at it from I don't do any prep, I just step in the pulpit and the Holy Spirit's going to give me something.
Yeah.
I don't know why you'd even go to a conference about preparing, but I think there was the potential that would stop you. Theologically, maybe you wouldn't line up.
Maybe thinking that you already have it all figured out.
Sometimes
pastors they have their process, they have their system. They figure
this
works for me. I don't need to learn more.
I don't need to improve. I could see how that would be a big hindrance. I don't need to spend my time, but I don't think this isn't the here's how to do this better conference. It's here's how to understand and unpack the Word of God better.
There really wasn't a huge time commitment. So it was a 3-day conference, right? 2.5 days.
2.5 if you don't do the leaders thing. The leaders thing was an all-day thing the day before, but yeah.
So 2.5 days, and then the prep work. If you put a decent amount of time into your outlines and stuff ahead of time, what is that?
Did we put that on the recording? Did we put that on the recording with Robert?
I don't know. It might have been offline.
But I was like,
you admitted to how long you spent.
I did this, and he's like, you probably should have doubled it. And here's the sad part: doubling it wouldn't have been that much more time.
But let's say you spent 8 hours.
Yeah. So I think even if you really put a solid 4 in each worksheet, which would be 8 total, you'd be set.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's not like you're preaching it. You're having a conversation about that with the other guys at your table group.
Yeah.
And so...
And if you're smart, one of the guys at my table preached that sermon.
Yeah.
So he used all of this to then turn it back into a sermon, and he double dipped that, which I wish we were going through 2 Timothy at our church now.
I was just going to say that's the one thing I would do differently is really plan, okay, I'm going to this workshop on this book of the Bible, so I'm going to preach a series on this book of the Bible. Because you come out of that with sermon outlines on every passage.
Oh, it's so great, yeah. Well, so I used that for a prayer thing. I went there. Daniel, who went with us, is preaching the senior adult luncheon from one of those, and thought, man, you could really capitalize on your time.
Sure.
By really digging in. And so, like, we probably need to put 2 Timothy. We just did an epistle, so I just didn't think that through very well.
Sure.
But if you thought that through...
It's okay. I'm going to save my papers for when we get there.
So, all right. So, you want to go to another one, is what you're saying?
I would go again. What do you think? 1 out of 10, would you go again?
I'm definitely planning on, if I have to travel to one, I will. I think 1 a year would be a really smart thing to do. It'd be kind of nice to do 2 a year, but 1 a year for sure.
1 a year for sure. It's that just sharpen the saw thing. You know, as pastors, I think we always need to find ways to be learning in that. And I think that's a great way, 1, not to just meet other guys and be encouraged by other guys. 2, sit under some preaching. As pastors, you don't always get to sit and hear a sermon, you know, and also get some reps in, get some hits at the batting cages.
You know what I would like? So, the guys in Southern California, most of those guys were all connected through the LA Shepherds.
Shepherd LA.
Shepherd LA network or whatever. So all those guys knew each other. Most of them. Even across, there was Presbyterian guys and Baptist guys and just some different all kinds of different stuff.
They all knew each other.
There was a guy from Fundamentals back. I mean, there were just lots of different, but they all seemed to be, for the most part, a couple guys had come in from pretty far, but a lot of those guys knew each other. I don't think it hurt us not knowing all of them.
No.
But I think there's more value, and this is what Brett talked about in the recording too. I think it'd be great to have one close, if you could, so that you could connect with those guys a couple times a year. Outside of that, I mean, I heard people say, we share worksheets. We send them to each other once in a while, or we evaluate each other's preaching, or we get together. Like, they get together. I think there'd be so much value in just having the ability to kind of create a regional cohort to talk about preaching and work through the texts together and stay sharp.
Yeah, because that's kind of, I think, the follow-up piece that Brett was alluding to. Yeah. You don't necessarily need follow-up from the guys at Simeon Trust, but some follow-up with your other brothers. Like, if I have a guy that I could send that paper to and say, hey, will you look at this? I'm struggling with this text. It wouldn't take 10 minutes to look at somebody's outline.
Right.
And give them some feedback.
Because they did limit them to one sheet front and back. It wasn't hard.
No.
So I think that would be pretty cool. Like, I think that's why it'd be really nice to have something local, is the potential for doing something more.
Yeah.
And I think that's what those guys in Southern California are doing. So while, you know, they get lots of requests and they have the potential to go lots of places and things are limited, I'm hopeful we could put one here.
Yeah.
And then I'm hopeful that some of the people here might, you know, maybe you do a cohort not at the workshop, because the workshop, you know, it crosses all kinds of denominations, but maybe you have a local association or some sort of maybe the Salt Lake School of Theology could have their own little cohort thing kind of on the side. Like, there's things that could happen, which I think would be incredibly beneficial. But to answer your question, I'm planning on doing another one. I wanted to turn around and do one that's one kind of close, but it's next month. I can't do it.
Don't unpack the car yet. Let's go.
It's still not that close. It's a long haul to get. It's closer than where we went, but not much closer.
Not much.
So, yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, I think it was a good use of our time. It was a great trip.
Yeah, so, I liked it. Helpful. I liked it a lot. I don't know if any of the Simeon Trust guys are listening, but
I'm sure they are.
Thank you. Are you? You're definitely sure they are.
No, I appreciate those guys. There's a lot of work that goes into making that happen, especially across the country. What did Robert Kinney say there at the beginning? Like, they had started with like one conference or something, and now they've got like 100 a year.
So, no, more than, might be more than that. And they're in other countries and all over, but he's like, it's amazing to see how this is, over the last 20 years, really expanded. I mean, partly due to the sort of the resurgence of expositional preaching, but it was really great, man. Yeah. It was really great.
Well, and here I thought all the work was done, but if we're going to try to get a workshop going here, I guess the real work begins now.
Well, maybe. I mean, I really hope we do, and who knows what'll go into that, but, and if not, then I'm just going to plan it in my year to fly somewhere. I'm going to fly, not drive 13 hours. I mean, I didn't mind. You know, it's great to spend that 13 hours in the car with you both ways, but...
something you'll never forget.
A flight might have made that
a
little bit
easier. If you're living in the Utah area and you're listening to this, or you would be interested in driving 13 hours to come to Utah.
Yeah, that means if you live in Idaho, Nevada, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Colorado, if you're going to say 13 hours, New Mexico. I actually think, so I was thinking about it, we have partners that come out here and do mission work. You know, we could probably get some of those pastors who partner with us to do some of the legwork, so they could serve as small group leaders if we needed, and they could fly out and join us out here. Or even if they didn't, they could come be a part of pastors, equipping pastors in the mission field. It'd be awesome.
All I'm saying is Utah's a beautiful state. There's a lot to do. Great skiing. Like, there's a good excuse to come out here.
Hey, this is really neither here nor there, but you know what? This is a little thing that, you know what we need? Maybe we can get somebody to make a donation to help us. The little tables they had where you can put two people at a little narrow table for classroom setting.
Sure.
That was awesome.
As opposed to a giant one.
Instead of like big giant tables, those were we need to figure out how to get some. Well, so we need to raise some funds to really improve our class. That's just neither here nor there. Here's the deal.
I feel like we've derailed if you're asking about
tables. If you're
listening,
we have. If you're listening to this and you would like to learn how to study the Bible better, the online courses, Charles Simeon Trust.org, fantastic. And they don't sponsor us or anything, so like this is just, we just love it. The workshops, absolutely wonderful. And don't waste your workshop opportunity. Do a couple online courses and really get the most bang you can out of those workshops. I would highly encourage it. And then I know you've been talking about the Chicago course. That's like a workshop on steroids for a long period of time. You would come out of that like amazing.
If we're raising funds, there's nothing more that I'd want to do.
You want to go to that 3 week thing?
I want to go to that 3 week
thing. Where do you live?
I don't know.
How do you pay to live in Chicago for 3 weeks? But get that 3 week thing or whatever. It's at 3 weeks?
Something like that, yeah.
That would be like just multiple times. That'd be amazing.
Huge rips.
Okay, wow.
All right, well.
If you're listening and going, why did I just listen to this? Well, thank you. We're going to shift gears onto a new topic.
And if you've been on the fence about doing a workshop or going to one, sign up for an online course and attend a workshop today.
Yeah, for sure.
Until next time.
Thanks for listening. Salty Believer Unscripted is a production of SaltyBeliever.com. Visit the website to find more resources like the podcast you've just listened to.